Red Bull Racing is one move away from full collapse, and this has been decades in the making. What I'm going to show you here is all of the moving and shaking around the Red Bull Formula 1 team that has just come to a head, and we're waiting for the final chess piece to move. I don't actually think Red Bull Racing is going to win another race. I think this is going to be so severe that I don't think they'll have a future in Formula 1. And this is pretty crazy because Red Bull Racing was a team which seemed virtually untouchable during the majority of the ground effect era. Not only due to their performance obviously, but also due to their pure passion for the sport. They entered Formula 1 and they ran it purely for the love of the game. They didn't have a road car business or historical manufacturing background. The fact is, as a newer team in this modern era of Formula 1, Red Bull have known multiple periods of success, both in the Sebastian Vettel era and also in the Max Verstappen era, and it's a testament to how well the system has worked when it's worked. Because even in the times when their performance was slightly lacking, they always had this energy to them, with drivers such as Daniel Ricciardo and more recently Max Verstappen really serving as pillars of the team during more difficult times. Despite all the success the team enjoyed with that model, however, recent years have proven that nothing lasts forever. The team that once prided itself for being the party team who did things differently has undergone significant changes, ranging from standard personnel departures to significant controversies that rocked the team to its core and resulted in the sacking of one of the most iconic team principals in Formula 1 history. Performance has slumped, and there was a time where there was a genuine concern that Red Bull might disappear forever. Now, over the course of this video, I'm going to show you the play-by-play, and it's pretty shocking. So we have to start with the beginnings of Red Bull in Formula 1. And what was unusual with Red Bull, for a team that came in, like I said, with no big car manufacturing business, was the amount of talent they assembled around the driver. They had Christian Horner, an incredibly talented team principal. They had Adrian Newey, arguably the most talented car designer in history. And they had people like Jonathan Wheatley and other people around the team like Helmut Marko who were incredibly talented at what they did. This meant that Red Bull was a team that could foster real success once they got the right drivers. And that started with Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian Vettel was the first driver at Red Bull Racing to take that team, to take all the machinery around it, to take the system and take it to real success. Now, there were signs of how Red Bull Racing wouldn't be able to sustain itself in the long future with the battles between Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber when it came to being a number one driver. It was something that never sat comfortably in Red Bull, and it was pretty clear to everyone that Sebastian Vettel was the number one driver. However, when Vettel left and Webber left, there was a chance for a new beginning, and there was Max Verstappen, who was a protege in Formula 1, the son of Jos Verstappen, a previous Formula 1 driver, who was vying to be the new future of Red Bull Racing. However, he was partnered by the equally talented and equally rated, I would say, Daniel Ricciardo, who was also a race winner and viewed as a future Formula 1 world champion. However, it all starts in 2018, because in 2018, Daniel Ricciardo left Red Bull in a shocking move to join Renault. Well, actually wouldn't be the last time that he would race within the Red Bull family. Now, this shocking move allowed Red Bull to go all in on a Max-centric philosophy. No more pretending that there's no number one driver. Now Max clearly was that number one driver. This started what we can call a second seat curse at Red Bull Racing. You had extremely talented drivers, like in 2019, Alex Albon getting promoted into the Red Bull, but cast aside only a few races later. Pierre Gasly also promoted, but equally cast aside and cycled back to the second team. In fact, Alex Albon and Pierre Gasly are rated as two of the best drivers in Formula 1 at the moment, but they didn't have a chance in the Red Bull Max-centric philosophy that existed in the team at the time. Now, Sergio Perez came in 2021, and actually he looked to be a fairly solid second driver, but his fall-off needs to be studied. He was handily beaten by Max Verstappen in 2021 season, finishing 4th in the championship, and it kind of got worse from there. In 2022, the silly season at Red Bull just got even worse. Nick De Vries was brought in to replace Pierre Gasly at Toro Rosso or RB Cash, whatever it was called there, the sister team, and partner Yuki Tsunoda, which seemed a very strange move because Nick De Vries was also cycled out soon after. In 2023, Red Bull's chief designer Rob Marshall left for McLaren. This started what I would say is the beginnings of a major brain drain at Red Bull, and he's not the only big player who's left Red Bull Racing to go to McLaren. In fact, it looks like Marshall's departure and joining McLaren may have directly contributed to Red Bull's World Constructors' Championship loss in 2024 and Max's World Drivers' Championship loss in 2025. More on that soon. Now, despite a season of utter domination in 2023, questions are still being raised concerning the team's reliance on Max Verstappen and the inability of the team to find a second driver to match him. In fact, the situation is so crazy that Daniel Ricciardo, yes, Daniel Ricciardo, returns to AlphaTauri in 2023 after Nick De Vries sacked, but then another absolute massive bomb occurs because Jonathan Wheatley, one of this original crew, leaves Red Bull Racing in 2024, and he is a massive strategic loss. He was arguably the key to Max's 2021 title victory against Lewis Hamilton. Now, Max managed to secure the 2024 World Drivers' Championship. However, Red Bull as a team is clearly losing direction. Perez is sacked from Red Bull at the end of the season, and he's replaced by Liam Lawson. Hadjar now also enters a sister team alongside Yuki Tsunoda, who for a long time was touted as having a good run in the second seat at Red Bull Racing. Now, increasing power struggles between the Austrian and Thai sides of the Red Bull F1 team around this time led to political tensions within the team. The Verstappen camp, consisting of Max Verstappen, Jos Verstappen, and also Helmut Marko, is also very vocal. Now, the controversy surrounding Christian Horner and increasingly subpar results over the course of the 24 season end up with him being fired in 2025, replaced by the team principal of the second team, Laurent Mekies. To make matters worse at Red Bull, the legendary designer Adrian Newey leaves and goes to Aston Martin. The brain drain is in full swing. The rest of the 2025 season is the same but worse. Red Bull is completely now reliant on Max, who despite a monumental effort is unable to win the championship, missing out by 2 points to Lando Norris at McLaren. Driver swaps and mismanagement lead to bad PR. Liam Lawson is switched back to VCARB after only two races, with Yuki Tsunoda rising to the challenge. Tsunoda tries his best but ultimately really fails. The car is impossible to drive for him. He's sidelined. Hadjar is demoted to Red Bull Racing, and Lindblad enters VCARB alongside Lawson for the 2026 season. Helmut Marko, one of the original powerhouses of the team by the way, leaves at the end of the 2025 season, really marking the end of an era. Now, 2026 was always going to be a different scenario for multiple reasons, for example the new regulations. However, Red Bull's problems are not what was expected. They have the best internal combustion engine, if the FIA are to believe, but a real subpar chassis, with both drivers regularly complaining. We haven't seen Red Bull come out with a terrible chassis for a long time, if ever. Crucially, Max hates the new cars and he's off driving GT3s. Also, his team engineer GP signs a bombshell contract for McLaren for 2028. GP has been a pillar of Red Bull's success for years, forming one of F1's most iconic duos with Max. Will this guarantee Max's departure before 2028 as well? The team is now a complete shell of its former self. There's none of that party energy it once had. VCARB is now seen as a joke, just kind of like a breeding ground for drivers to be cycled into the Red Bull team only to be cast onto the scrap heap. And the big Jenga block that I've been saying since the beginning of the video is this. What happens when Max Verstappen leaves Red Bull Racing? There's nothing left. From the incredible talent that was there at the beginning, from the party years, from the years of domination, from winning against all odds, from being this underdog team that doesn't have a big car manufacturer behind it, they've ended up with basically nothing. At the moment, Max Verstappen is everything in this team. Verstappen is simply Red Bull Racing. So if another team can prize him away, it doesn't look like Aston Martin, but if McLaren sensationally could prize him away and start a new generation of succession Max Verstappen at McLaren, I really do think there's nothing left for Red Bull Racing in Formula 1. There's no way for them to recover. There's no way for them to rebuild. They've been completely gutted over the years, and no one's talking about this, weirdly. Like, they're a complete shell of themselves. So let me know what you think in the comments. Do you see it this way, or do you see it differently? Is there anything I've missed out? Let me know. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.